Welcome to the Kings Beat podcast. I am James Ham, your Kings insider for ESPN 1320, as well as the Kings Beat. And joining me, Mr. Sean Cunningham from ABC 10. What's going on, Sean?
Oh, I feel like the winds of trade rumors and tornado, whatever that looks like, is just going to swirl through my place and even corrupt my downtime. And here we are talking about it on the podcast. And I like talking about it, but this stupid phone will not stop going off all morning. So
It's nuts, right?
And you know what, James? We're still like 20 days away. It seems
21 days, 3 weeks until the trade deadline. I don't feel like,
by the way, for those of you on YouTube, you might get a
oh, there it is,
a kick out of my wallpaper on my phone. I have this t-shirt and wear it proudly, but it also oftentimes signifies my relationship with my phone. So
there you go. That is Sean's closest mate there.
That's right.
his phone.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's cover a couple of bases. Number one, keep giving us thumbs up. Keep subscribing on YouTube. Actually, it's going really well. Thank you for all the new subscribers. Thank you for all the thumbs ups. A lot of new views on YouTube. So that's a good thing. We like to see those things go up. Number two, if you didn't notice, I'm wearing the Kings Beat, the sweatshirt. Sean will have his soon. Big shout out to Jim Espinoza at Brickhouse Industries, doing really cool stuff for us over there. And hopefully soon we'll have some sort of merch shop, and you'll be able to get some cool stuff that says the Kings Beat. And
that is crazy. That is just crazy. It's crazy to think about that. We're gonna have gear.
We're gonna have gear.
That's weird.
Yeah.
We have merch. Do we have merch?
That's what they call it in the
concert world.
We're gonna have merch, Sean.
We're
gonna have merch. We'll have a merch shop. So again, if you need any t-shirt designs, if you need any graphic designs or t-shirts made or sweatshirts or anything like that, Brickhouse Industries is awesome. And he's a local guy, and he does work for people all over the place. So really good dude. Outside of that, make sure that if you're not a premium subscriber to the Kings Beat, that you become one. We've got the happy hour coming up, and hopefully we have a bunch of trades like in the next 5 or 6 days. So then that way we can actually have the Kings Beat happy hour before the trade deadline. If not, it's going to be dicey, and we'll try to figure something out. But I would hate to start the happy hour and then 20 minutes in, have to have someone else take over while Sean and I go do our jobs, our other jobs besides the jobs that we do here. Outside, Sean, let's just get to it. The levels of disappointment with this Sacramento Kings team, we keep reaching new lows of not this wasn't the lowest low of the season, but realistically, it probably should be. The Kings have lost back-to-back games to the Houston Rockets and the Detroit Pistons, two of the worst teams in basketball. Mm-hmm. And it's not just that they lose, it's the way that they lose. It's the way that they can't hang on against bad teams. And of course, that means that they are a bad team.
Yeah, I wanted to stop right there and say, because I had to do it myself. At one point I was saying, I don't think anyone's ever lost consecutive games to the Rockets or the Pistons this year. I didn't really go and do the research. I just wanted to put it out there and say, I probably can't do that, but I don't think it's been done. But then I went, wait, shame on me, Sean. Shame on you, you fool. This team is a bad team.
You fool.
I mean, it's a bad team. And I should not have this notion that if just because you're kind of in line for the play-in tournament that you are exempt from these games against the Detroit Pistons, who, yeah, you beat in Detroit, but that game last night, it was kind of fun, but just no defense.
Yeah, the first quarter was so bad. The Kings couldn't hit anything. I mean, at one point they were shooting 17% in the quarter. I was like, what in the world is happening? And then, De'Aaron Fox kept cooking. And then he kind of went dormant. And it was like, man, where'd you go? And then, they get to the final 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes left. They're up, 11? Oh no, I think they're up 10 and they allowed, or
The
maybe
11-0
not.
run. It was
They
11-0 run the end.
an
Yeah.
11-0 run to finish the game and they lost by 2 points. They had multiple shots to win it. Well, they had a shot to win it by Terrence Davis. They had a shot to tie it by De'Aaron Fox. And I'll say this, Sean, we just capped off a 5-game homestand and it started and ended the same exact way. De'Aaron Fox missed a game winner against the Cavs in the final second. De'Aaron Fox missed a game tying shot to end the homestand. And that's just like, it kind of sums up where we're at, right? Like they just can't get out of their own way.
Well, there is a bright side. I'll play Mr. Brightside. They didn't get their head kicked in.
Okay. I mean, I guess that's true, but I mean, you did get your head kicked in the last 2.5 minutes of the game.
I mean, the 11-0 run was not good. And let's draw the curtain back as we like to do. I'm sitting there next to James last night, and there's a bucket scored, and I could have sworn you said this game is over.
Oh,
and that's not what you said. You said this game is not over, because you realize that every time they were scoring a bucket, I go, you see, James, you see, and you're like, I think he thinks that I think he thinks that I said something I didn't say.
Yes.
And either way, whether you did or didn't, and I believe you didn't, but I heard that you did. Once they took the lead, you're like, no, I said they didn't. This game is not over.
Yeah, no. So we were sitting there.
Hilarious.
It was Sadiq Bey, and
that three was crazy.
The Kings had played excellent defense all the way up.
Whoa.
On that play.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah.
No. Yeah. They had stopped everything. It was like, hey, look, they're playing defense. They're going to get the stop. And I think at that point, they were up 9. And Sadiq Bey just pulls up from like 27 feet over. Someone was draped all over him. I can't remember who it was. Just drilled it. And then Fox still had like a hop in his step, busted down court, got right into the key and hits Harrison Barnes for a wide open 3 in the corner. Harrison Barnes is shooting, I think I saw a stat, something like from mid-December or early December on, he's like 3rd in the NBA out of everyone. And he's shooting like 51% or 53% on catch and shoot threes. He didn't catch the ball. Like,
no, he fumbled it.
It was full on Harrison Barnes let a ball slip, a perfect pass slipped right through his hands and out of bounds. And they came down, hit another 3. All of a sudden it's a 3-point game. And it's like, oh man, I can't believe this is happening. And then after that, it was the and one goaltend, Roshawn Holmes, who had 4 blocks in the game, looked more like himself on the defensive end, still a little rusty, still isn't hitting the glass, still isn't as accurate as he has been in the past. But he had 4 really nice blocks. Then he had just had an egregious goaltend, which was like, oh man, are you kidding me? I mean, the ball clearly came off the glass, and that's how they tied the game. They went to the line and hit the free throw. And then, man, Kojo beats you. I love Kojo, but Kojo beats you.
James, as he pointed out to me, as I saw him in the hallway afterwards, and I was like, hey man, good for you. Have a game like this. I said, you got him. And he goes, he reminded me twice, James. Twice. This is the second time he's done it in this building. 2 times. He gave him a 2-piece, 2 seasons apart. This crappy Detroit team. He comes in after being shipped off, and he lays it on him. I mean, you remember that game last year, right?
Yeah. I mean, what's crazy is that Corey Joseph, like, he could have been a King still. He was still under contract for this season. I think he opted out and then signed a different deal with them, right? So he had a $2.5 million guarantee for this season, or a $12 million contract. I don't think they kept him for 12. I think they bought him out, and then they brought him back for like $5 or $6 million a year for like a 2 or 3 year deal. But like, that's how they got DeLon Wright, and that's how they got Tristan Thompson. So you got Tristan Thompson, who I think was available, but like who the heck knows at this point? He wasn't dancing around wearing a white suit like he was the game before. I'm not sure what happened to Tristan Thompson, but he clearly didn't play in this game. And I'll keep saying it. I don't think Tristan Thompson will play again for the Kings this season or again at all because he's not under contract after this year. I think he's a buyout candidate. But again, it's Corey Joseph, who doesn't fit the King style of play. I totally get it, but he's still a solid vet who does solid vet things. And I know people, started harping on him late in his career here in Sacramento, but he's such a good dude. Like, again, one of those top 5 or 6 like best dudes to hang out with in the locker room that we've seen over the course of the last decade.
James, April 8th, they come in here to Sacramento. They beat the Kings 113-101. Corey Joseph, 24 points, 7 assists on 10 of 14 shooting in 31 minutes.
You know what's crazy, though? Like, De'Aaron started to just go at him, and it was spectacular. And then
do you remember what happened, though? I know what you're saying. He did the same reverse pivot move on him, and it worked. Did it the second time? Corey fouled him.
Hard.
Yeah. And then there was a play right after that. Corey steals the ball from him on a drive, and it comes down, dribbles out, takes a couple seconds. Then Corey is the one that hits the 3. I mean, just the guys and the defense they ran on him was like not only on Fox, I mean, mainly on Buddy. I mean, there was a moment we're thinking like, man, is Buddy like protesting? Is he pulling a Kobe here and doesn't want to shoot? Like, especially after
Buddy took 2 shots.
He took 2 shots, and we know he had open shots in the first half. Second half was a little bit of a different story. And Alvin's right. Like, it did coincide with a hot night with Terrence Davis. We get that.
Yeah.
But they look, the top blocking that they do on Buddy Hield, and you can call it a box and one. And, Alvin credited, having Rex Kalamian over there, and obviously Isaiah, and obviously Corey Joseph, who knows him and goes up against him well. Like, yeah, that's part of it, but Buddy needs to free himself from that move. How about some creativity in the offense? Like, there was a time, James, in that game where I go, what are both of these teams running? Like, both of these teams are running just not creative offenses. And
no,
if Sacramento had actually pushed the pace a little bit faster than they normally do, that could have coincided with a little bit more success. But James, they still got up 131 points. So the pace wasn't really the problem, but you give up 133 to a team that's 29th in scoring on the second night of a back-to-back who has 10 wins. I mean, just like, how many boxes do you want to check of just dreck? And
yeah,
it's just not good. That's awful.
That's a lot of boxes checked. Yeah. I mean, what's crazy is that, again, you mentioned Terrence Davis. He had a career high 35 points. De'Aaron Fox, I think, had 29 points. Harrison Barnes had 20. Marvin Bagley had 17. Like, they had a potential to have 3 guys with 20 points and 1 with 35. Like, I mean, they already finished with 3 guys with 20 points, but they could have had a 4th guy with 20 points or more. But they pulled Marvin for a little while. And then I was surprised they pulled Marvin. I was too,
because he was really good. And James, it might have been our fault, because at one point I'm like, okay, let me look up the last time there's 4 Kings players in 20 points, right? And as I start to look at that, I'm like, well, it's got to be the triple overtime game. Nope, it wasn't the triple overtime game. You have to go back to I didn't actually find an answer on that, but then I started looking. I was like, okay, we might have 2 guys that finished with 30 points, like you said, and then that didn't happen.
Yep.
And the last time that happened was Bogey, and I think it was Buddy back in the bubble. But just not good, man. I mean, like, both of those little milestones that we're trying to find, when's the last time that happened, just both never happened, and just kind of killed the momentum a little bit. So blame us.
Yeah. So I think the one interesting thing is, we've talked about this on the season. I think it's only once or twice this season where Tyrese Halliburton and De'Aaron Fox have both scored 20 or more. And then you see Terrence Davis walk out there and just, I don't care. Like, what did he have? 14 in the 4th? He was incredible. I remember I was writing in the 3rd quarter, I start writing my 6 takeaways, and he was 3 of 7 from 3 at that point. And then he finished 7 of 13. Like he was just lights out. He just kept going. And that's something that I think it would be really interesting if Tyrese Halliburton would learn something from. If there is one player on this team that I think he could actually learn something from, it would be the I don't care that you get from Terrence Davis. That this is who I am and I'm not going to change and I'm going to keep doing this. And so I would hope that Halliburton learns that. I'll also say this, man. If there is a chance for Buddy Hield to not be here after the trade deadline, I don't think that the Kings take a dramatic step backwards, because I really do think that Terrence Davis can fill almost every single category that Buddy brought and then some. He might not be as elite a 3-point shooter, but
I gave you dead air.
You did.
I was kind of noodling that through. I don't. I think he's a little. I know he's a lot more streaky than Buddy is.
Really?
But oh yeah, dude,
go back.
What is Buddy the second? Is Buddy not the second? Is second in threes right now?
Yeah, he's second in threes. Yeah. And he's up to 38 and almost 38.5% shooting.
And here's the difference. Like, we know, and this is why I think, no slight on Terrence. Like, Terrence has the mindset of like, I'm going to shoot. I'm going to come out here and I'm going to take shots. Buddy doesn't usually do that. You'll see him force a crazy shot every now and then. We saw it last night. I think both his shots were pretty awful.
The first one was so bad. Looks. Oh man, it was so bad.
Yeah, the first one was bad. Second one wasn't great either. But typically, the way he can get the shot off so quickly, and he kind of pick and chooses his spots a little bit. Terrence isn't that way. Terrence is coming out looking to gun, and I think because of that really, either he's going to catch fire, or more times than not, he's going to go through a lot of lulls where it's just not there. And I don't know, man. Like, he's clearly not the shooter that Buddy is, but I get what you're saying. From a wins-loss standpoint, you're probably right, because you're not living by the Buddy and dying by the Buddy. You're forcing to find scoring in different ways, and I think that would be a good thing for Sacramento. But to say that he's going to be what Buddy Hield was to the Kings is, I just don't see that.
I don't know, man. He's a lot more creative in my book. A lot more creative. He's a guy that doesn't just have to shoot threes. He does shoot a lot of threes. He's up to 32.6% on the season. He shot 37.2% from three last year. I just think he's more versatile. His assist numbers don't show as much as of the creation as I think that he does do. Plus he's young. He's under contract for a couple of years. I think that he's a guy that, I'm not saying build around Terrence Davis. No. I'm saying he reminds me a little bit of Bobby Jackson, like where there were shots where you're like, oh, no. And then yes. And when he is hitting, he's exciting to watch. I mean, he's averaging over 10 points a game in like 18 minutes. And I know it's been tough because there are plenty of games this season where the Kings just don't have the minutes for a fifth guard. And so he's been on the outside looking in. But I do think that there's potential there for him to be a bigger piece to what the Kings are doing moving forward. Now, Sean, we're just going to abandon actual game talk from here on out the rest of the pod, because
like for the rest of the season.
Yeah. Wednesday though was chaos, man. It was flat out chaos. And it started early with rumors that Fox was on the table for either Ben Simmons or Sabonis. Then we started having heavy hitters refuting that. It was all over the board. I mean, I've got my sources, you've got your sources. Let's start with that specific. Like I've heard very specifically that number one, the Kings, they do not want to move off of De'Aaron Fox or Tyrese Halliburton. It would take a 99% deal, like one of those deals that never comes along, where someone just gives you a Godfather deal and you've got to take it in order for the Kings to move on from Fox and or Halliburton. They want to build around Fox and Halliburton. They may not be able to do that because there could just not be any deals that come up and you have to do something. but they're not going to trade those guys just to trade them. That is who they would like to build around. And they've made that clear to people on the outside, to agents and stuff like that. I don't know if it's 100% that this is what the Kings are doing because they think that that's what's best. It could be that that's what they're doing at this point because those names have been out there and the deals that they've got, they're just saying, yeah, we're not taking any deals. And so we're pulling them back and we're not going to have any further conversations. But Sean, it just seems like we're in this whole cat and mouse thing where, someone's source says this and someone else's source says this. And it's chaotic, man. Like if there was a hidden reason for the Kings to lose that game on Wednesday night, it was because they had literally been like dragged through the mud all day on Twitter and all day in print. Like, right. I mean, it was chaos. It was chaos for you. It was chaos for me. It was this is wild.
It reached a little bit of a percolation on Wednesday because honestly, all these days have been the same, whether they've been reported or not. Like the rumor mill is churning. It is churning.
Yes.
I will say this, and as somebody put it to me after the game last night in the loss to Detroit was, there was the game on the floor, but there was a lot of games being played, which was kind of the bigger game that was being played through media reports and certain people kind of getting used a little bit. Shout out Keith Pompey and some other people in Philly. It's tough right now, and Daryl Morey's no stranger to the game. He's no stranger to the game. And I will say, James, you have to very look in at the dialogue because yes, nothing has changed. There is a want to not move De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Halliburton, and you identify those two people as the people you want to build around. Okay. Right. James, everyone's available. Everyone is available, and Kings fans should realize that. You don't have to look any further than DeMarcus Cousins. Now, Vlade, God bless him for a lot of his inexperience, came out and says, we're not trading him. We're not wanting to trade him. We are definitively not trading him. And then the Kings organization leaks out extension talk, all this other stuff. And then DeMarcus is traded. Okay. There is a want not to trade. A want. And that is and look, may not happen at all. It's very possible and very likely, and I'll get to that part in a second, that both De'Aaron and Ty will both be here. Great. That's fine. Some Kings fans probably love that, celebrate. Other Kings fans might groan at that and say, oh, they got to get rid of them. They got to do something big. Okay. Put that aside. What have the Kings historically, especially over the past 2 years, really been used for? We've talked about it here on the podcast. Leverage. Right? Leverage.
Yep.
The reality of this situation, as Daryl Morey pointed out in a radio interview today, is that, there are deals to be had with Sacramento.
Pat
on the head. That's cute.
Do you ever hear that from a GM? Like, that was bold. That was bold.
You hear it from Daryl Morey.
That was bold.
But what I'm getting at is you can call it bold, but you can say there are deals to be had with Sacramento. Doesn't mean he's making the deal. Doesn't mean he wants the deal. He's telling the rest of the league they've got something there. Doesn't mean I like it. James, I don't think Ben Simmons is going to be moved by the deadline. I really don't. I said that last podcast. I still think that. I don't think they're going to move him. Philly is surging. They're surging right now. Did you see the game Joel Embiid had last night? They can be better. The guy that they might move is probably Tobias Harris, which is one of the worst contracts out there and can definitely help out a lot of teams. But it's a terrible contract. We get that. James, they're going to try to make moves, and I just don't think they're going to move Simmons. I think they'll get to the offseason or around the draft with Simmons. Could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I really do. I hope I'm wrong. But I think right now you're hearing a lot of chatter, and I think the Kings are behind a lot of the chatter. And what they want to show, they want to kind of show that they're not going to be used as leverage, and that they're going to show that the only way we move our franchise centerpiece is if we're getting one back or we're getting blown away with a deal. Well, no shit. That's the way it works. That's the way these things work, man. Like, that's what you should be doing. So you've heard Monty McNair on local radio recently, and he says, hey, it's not going to be a hard reset. And I think that's what people need to hear, because it's not going to be a hard reset, even though you could argue it might be the way to do it. But look at the stands. Like, you can't afford a hard reset. I mean, it's just not feasible fiscally. It's not feasibly from a competitive standpoint. The message you send to your fan base after trying to build what you build. And granted, he inherited a lot of Lottie's stuff, but he's the one that extended Fox. Now, granted, it was a no-brainer. You had to do it, but a lot of these moves are still Monty McNair. So it's a rambling way to say that brace yourself, Kings fans, for as much as the inconsistencies and up and down roller coaster that we've seen on the court this year, these next 21 days might resemble it almost exactly. And then you may not have a move at all. You may not have a move at all. You may have a move. Maybe your move is moving Tristan Thompson for a second round pick, or however, I'm just throwing stuff out there that probably don't make sense, but something as unsatisfying as that, if at all. And they still have very amazing assets in the way of their draft pick, specifically because they're closer to the bottom, James, than they are to the top. And that draft pick is going to be really, really good, whether it's this year or even next year. So they have assets. And I don't believe that Daryl Morey looks at the Kings assets as a joke, but I think for the piece that he has, even if he kind of tipped his hat a little bit and said, maybe we're willing to come down a little bit to a top 40 NBA player, go F yourself, Daryl Morey. Like, this is what we're like. It's all those words are just word salad. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of dangling the carrot out in front of these teams that should be desperate to pick up Ben Simmons. As we talked about last podcast, James, who are the teams that are most linked to Ben Simmons? Terrible ones that record wise are just not good. And honestly, those are the types of teams the Kings should be trying to, you don't try to make you're not trying to make a trade with a team that's going to compete for a title in the East, even without Ben Simmons. And that's what they're looking like right now.
So your idea would be if John Collins is out there and available in a Ben Simmons trade, then why don't the Kings go look at John Collins?
100%.
Yeah. So I totally get what you're saying. And I also think, like, I'm pretty sold that they aren't going to move Fox or Halliburton between now and the deadline.
Right.
Like, if there is a deal, and I don't think Ben Simmons fits the mold, it would have to be bigger than Ben Simmons. That's how they feel at this point.
But yeah, that's lunacy.
Yeah, no, I agree. But that's kind of like the thought process, that it would have to be a Godfather deal, where it's like, no one in the league would say no to that. Like,
and that's where it gets crazy, because you almost want to like grab some of those people by their shirt collar and say, define to me a Godfather deal. Because once you set yourself up for disaster. Because again, what have we talked about in the press conferences where Monty McNair has talked about optionality, and we want to be able to strike when the iron's hot and bring it? Like, what if that big piece, big bold piece, is somebody that's not an all-star, that's not something that, what if your big bold piece, just to be a dick here, but like, what if your big bold piece was trading for Tristan Thompson? That's not good enough. You know what I mean? And I know they wouldn't describe that, but that's the trade you made. You know what I mean?
No, like, totally.
So like, you have to, if you're bringing in Lauri Markkanen, that's not good enough. It's not. If you're bringing in Christian Wood, I think some people would think it's good enough. I think most people would say that's not good enough.
No, you're probably right. That would have to be a move that went with a different move. I mean, totally.
And I agree.
That move makes sense, but it makes sense in a combination with other moves. So
I think they're just nurturing their fan base to expect something grandiose. And at the end of the day, when they do make the move that they deem and define as grandiose or this blockbuster or Godfather, like as you mentioned, James, I think it could go over like a fart in church.
Okay. No, I'm with you. And I'll say this, like, everything that I learned yesterday, number one, like, despite, like, I wrote on Sunday, my Sunday musings, if I were the Kings GM for the day, the deal that I would make was was taking back Tobias Harris. I think, well, first of all, the Kings have no interest in taking back Tobias Harris, from my understanding. They believe that is one of the top 2 or 3 worst contracts in the NBA. That does not mean that they won't take back Tobias Harris. I'll just
it is
yeah.
the poison pill in the NBA, but that poison pill can play. And as we talked about,
poison
James,
pill can play, and that poison pill, if it comes with a 3-time 25-year-old all-star, then it's a poison pill that I'm willing to take.
100%.
Now, that's me. That from what I know is not the Sacramento Kings. That is not their thinking as of right now. That deal will not happen because they think that contract is right up there with like John Wall, Russell Westbrook contracts, where you're just like, ooh, that's a bad deal. Okay, so that's where like, if Tobias Harris is off the table, then I pretty much think that deal is completely dead, and there's no way to get Ben Simmons to Sacramento unless you're giving up Fox or Halliburton. And so we have these give and takes. I do know that the Kings are willing to include draft picks. Any and all draft picks are on the table.
It's their best asset.
It is their best asset by a ton. And I've said this, it's their first round picks are worth more on the open market than Halliburton or Fox. There's no question in my mind.
And they're also worth more before they attach a name to it. So think about
now
the draft in June, where, you know, maybe someone wants to wait. It's like, no, you deal these before you attach a name to it.
No, that, and you attach a number to it. So a name or a number. Like if it's the 8th pick, it loses a tremendous amount of value. So if I'm the Kings, I think, number one, the Detroit game was a blow, and why we're seeing someone like Daryl Morey go out and really drum up things today specifically is because the pressure just got turned up a little bit more on Monty McNair. He now understands that the next 5 games are brutal, that there's a good chance that his team could hit a 5 to 7 game losing streak. You got the Bucks. Like this road trip, like there are winnable games on this road trip. There are also 5 losable games. Like
you could be 0-5 coming back.
Yeah, you could be 0-5, and that puts you at a 7 game losing streak. So I think that, again, you're turning the screws in this situation, which is interesting because it tells me that the Kings want to make a deal now more than they want to make a deal like, or even Philadelphia would prefer to make a deal now and play the season out, like add an extra 10 games to get used to the players that you have and to move forward. Do I think that there's still a possibility that Ben Simmons becomes a Sacramento King? I do.
Yeah.
I do. And I think that that's a big one. But I'm going to tell you this. Draft picks, all of them. The Kings have their next 7 draft picks. They can't trade all 7. And the reason why, I'm just going to clarify something here really quick. Per the NBA salary cap, you can only trade up to 7 years of picks. Like in like this year, 2022, we can only talk about year 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, and 28. You cannot trade the 2029 first round pick. That's not allowed by the league. You can't trade consecutive picks because of the Stepien rule, unless you have another first round pick, like sitting on in your war chest. The Kings don't have that. So they can trade like the 22, 24, 26, and 28. They could trade the 23, the 25, the 27. They can't trade the 29, right? You can do pick swaps in between your traded picks, but that's where, the Kings have an extra second round pick in 2022. They also have an extra second round pick in 2025. And so they do have assets there. Now, I'm also going to tell you this. Everything I know from within the franchise right now, Harrison Barnes is available. Let's see.
They're all available, James. They're all available.
Is
Everybody.
Available. I agree. We keep saying they're all available. But what I'm saying is that right now, there's a big difference between people hearing all the Kings are available and Buddy Hield, Harrison Barnes, and Roshawn Holmes are all available. And that doesn't mean that all 3 will get traded. It doesn't mean that any of them will get traded, They are all available right now. So, like, again, I'm not talking about Marvin Bagley, which we all know has been available for like a year. He's been available for a year. Buddy Hield has been available probably for a year and a half. Harrison Barnes and Roshawn Holmes are both, as of we sit here today, they are available. They could be had by another team. And from what I understand, the reason is if you are going to build around Tyrese Halliburton and De'Aaron Fox, we know that the core of those 5 players is not good enough. It's not good enough. And so that means if you're going to keep Fox and Halliburton, you need to, even if it's switching out 1 or 2 or all 3, you got to try something different because that's not working. And so on to the next.
Yeah. I mean, there's the important thing to know is there's no revelation here. There's no revelation.
No.
Everyone, it's all available. This team, we knew 20 games in, 25 games in, this was not going to be, this isn't, this
probably
ain't it.
15 games in.
Well, really coming into the season for some of us, but but no, I mean, it's just no revelation. And again, I think what is coming out of the Kings right now is a proof, as we keep talking about, how everyone think, like, if you're Daryl Morey, right? There's his old buddy and Monty McNair, who we worked with, and tightening the screws, feeling the pressure, looking at this pick. They want to attack the Kings as if they're operating out of desperation. And you can't do that. Some will say that maybe that'll happen. Maybe the closer you get to that deadline and the way the record gets, it's like, I always say, this season be damned. It doesn't matter. The season, if you're looking at making a franchise altering trade, the season does not matter. The season matters more to the Sixers than it does to the Kings.
Heck yeah.
In the season. So,
and they're
really
acting like it doesn't. They're acting
right.
like it doesn't.
Right. Yeah. So, and I think the Kings, they have to, those are the waters they have to navigate. And trust me, they are desperate to a degree. I mean, people not showing up at these games is speaking loudly, So, but I think they have to come out and they have to say a lot of these things and leak a lot of these things because of the fact that people think that they're operating out of a sense of desperation and that they're going to make a rash decision and that they're just going to give away De'Aaron Fox for somebody not like for example, giving away De'Aaron Fox for Tobias Harris alone. That ain't it. Right. And I think there would be people that would think that they would do that. And that's the type of stuff we're talking about here, where some of these moves, the Sabonis, like Fox would not be included in a Sabonis deal, straight up. That's the important thing to say, straight up.
Yeah.
But he could be, depending upon other packages that could come around, other teams that attach, whatever the package gets. So, the want, again, not wanting to trade him, not wanting to trade Tyrese Halliburton. Those are the two you'd rather not if you had to pick. But everyone being available is everyone being available. Yeah. And it's gonna be, James, this is gonna be stupid. This is gonna be one of the most stupid trade deadlines in Kings history because it could be a whole lot of window dressing for not a lot of return. Or it could be monumental, back to the Artest, back to the moves like that we've seen in years past. It could be unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, like,
but if you had to pick one,
if I had to pick one right now,
I feel like nothing's happening.
Well, I think first of all, I think they've been turned down a couple of times.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. And they've been the ones to turn down a lot.
Yes, and I also know this, like, a lot of these deals that are put out there that include, so a lot of people, you need to understand, like, when a team calls another team and says, hey, we heard Ben Simmons is available, we would give you this, and this. Okay. Well, if we were to trade Ben Simmons to you, we want this, and this. Okay. Well, thanks for your time. We're not going to do that. Now, it doesn't end there. Now a team goes and says, well, we had discussions with the Kings, and the discussions with the Kings included these 5 players or these 3 picks and these 2 players. Well, the Kings already hung up the phone, but that doesn't mean that you didn't hear their conversation. they pitch something back to you. And then they can go to the media and say, we had this conversation. We pitched it. Well, they don't even say we pitched it. They just say a deal was discussed, because it was discussed.
It was discussed. They're discussed all the time.
Yeah. And the Kings said, no, we're not going to do that.
And you didn't even mention one of the biggest, probably the most common ways trades get done. And that's by way of the agencies. And I think as it pertains to Ben Simmons, that's one of the things that if you're the Kings, I do think Philly looks at the Kings and says, we can get a deal done, not only with Sacramento, but involving Sacramento. So if there is a multi-team deal, obviously the picks are very attractive. So I've always talked about, if you're Monty McNair, you want to be a part of that multi-team deal, because that could land you a monster, right? It may not be Simmons, but you could still get something out of this deal that would be very, very beneficial for your organization. However, I'm not seeing Ben Simmons agency clutch. I don't see them as a agency that is driving a lot of trade options or discussions, pulling the teams together, playing broker to these teams and matchmaker to these teams. And I think in not doing that, that puts even more pressure on Daryl Morey to get a deal done eventually. Because, the pressure being there that if you're Sacramento, does Ben Simmons want to be in Sacramento? You remember, go back to that report eons ago. It was this year. It was in 2021 in the summer. And there was a list. There's teams in California.
Three teams in California.
Right.
I did do some due diligence on that around that time, and I was told that he would have no problems going to Sacramento.
No, and that part is accurate. But a lot changes from that time to where we are today on January 20th, 2022. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he looks at other teams a little bit more attractive than others than he did. I'm saying him and his group way back when. So, and if you're Daryl Morey, I don't give a damn where you want to be traded. And if picks are so attractive, for example, I'd move him to Oklahoma City and I'd get a whole bunch of picks. If I'd get as many picks as I could, because they have a truckload of them. Granted, that's probably not going to happen. And if you're the Thunder, you probably don't want to make that move. But that's kind of what was involved here. You don't hear the Thunder being on that list back in 2021, but you certainly, if you're Daryl Morey, you don't. It's kind of like when Kawhi Leonard was trying to force the hand of the Spurs, and it was similar to Kawhi, because it's like he wanted a trade, he was hurt, legitimately hurt, and he wasn't going to play, and then you had to make a move. You didn't have to move him to Toronto, but you ended up with a pretty good deal. You brought back DeRozan, you had some good things. What happened, James? It resulted in a championship for the Raptors. So, point being is, I was kind of rooting for the Spurs to go, we don't have to trade you. We'll do what's in the best interest of our team. And if you want to throw away years of your prime, do it. And that's what Ben Simmons so far through this season has been willing to do.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, he does. It reminds me of that situation a little bit. It also reminds me of the Chris Webber situation, where you're taking a young player with a bunch of skills that everyone has known has a bunch of skills for a decade, and he hasn't quite lived up to who some people thought he would be. And I'll go on the record again and say this: if you're Ben Simmons, the perfect spot is Sacramento.
Yeah, I agree. 100%.
It's absolutely the perfect spot, because there's enough talent that you can actually win. And if you are the guy that delivers, you'll be embraced as if you're a god. You will not have the Philadelphia media chirping at you all day long. You're going to have a different experience, and you get to rebuild who and what you are in a little bit of obscurity. But if you're part of a young and fun and upcoming group in Sacramento, like, the fans will embrace you. The NBA will embrace you as well. They do. When the Kings are fun, the NBA does embrace them like they do any other team. And so I think the potential to kind of develop and become who you were supposed to be as a player is in Sacramento more than it is in Golden State, where you're trying to fight for a championship, or in LA, where the magnifying glass, like, you just get burnt like a little ant. it's just hard. And I think he would just completely collapse under that. If he is the player that we think he is, and he is sort of the personality that we think he is, you can grow up here, you can develop here, you can be the player you're supposed to be. And I think that if he's not being told that by his agent, he should be, because this isn't a bad landing spot for a lot of players. Is it glamorous? No, but it doesn't mean it's not a great place to really get your bearings and grow as a player and find success. So we'll have to see how it plays out. But again, I think this has been a wild week, Sean. And I also, like, you just have to, if you're someone who is living and breathing by this, hanging on every single word.
First of all, don't.
Yeah, first of all, don't. That's very true. But secondly, take a step back, and every time you hear a rumor, regardless of where you hear it, like, start tracking it. Who is the person who's saying the rumor? Who is it that, like, don't tweet out someone who has 8 Twitter followers, number one. Like, that's not real news. But also start looking for the angle. Like, look for the angle. Look who the writer is, the reporter is, where they could be getting their information. It does not take you don't have to, like, build a wall, like, where you're trying to figure out who the serial killer is, and, you have all your suspects. It's not that hard to figure out where someone is getting their information, or at least a group of, like, where they might be getting their information. So take a second, like, use some critical thinking. Don't just be horribly emotional and freak out. Like, look at the deal as it is. And, I think the one thing that I saw from Shams, and it might even been like a clear point being made, was that, like, the Kings franchise was mentioned very specifically, that the Kings want to move forward with these 2 players. Also, Chris Gaston, De'Aaron Fox's agent, has been informed that the Kings want to move forward with De'Aaron Fox. Now we have that's 2 sources coming at you. It's not one source. It's not, there's a big difference between the word source and the word sources in today's NBA and today's reporting. There is.
Yeah.
There's a huge difference, and you need to look for that. And then you need to make sure that that you feel like someone actually has sources and not a source, because that's where we're, like, I feel like Toonsit's a driving cat half the time here. Like,
well, and here's the other thing. Memo to media, you don't have to report everything that you hear from a source, because if I did that, the object, James, is to be right, not to be first, and not to be sensational, but to be right. And that's why you need sources and not source.
And it's not just, it's to be right. This isn't easy. So people understand, it's not easy to, for some moments, feel like you're on the outside looking in. And even if it is your team, that you don't have the information that you should have. But at other times, like, you have the information, you're just not running with it because it's not properly sourced. And that, like, these are people you're dealing with. Like, this isn't, like, De'Aaron Fox is an actual human being. Like, I'll even say this, like, this is something that maybe people out there have noticed over the last like couple of media sessions. Does De'Aaron Fox seem like he's in a better mood, Sean?
That's a good question. That's actually a really good question. I don't think he's in a better mood, but I do feel he's found at least not even a comfort level, just like but I can maneuver this. Like, I feel better in this space. I just don't know that it's a better mood. I really don't. Do you?
I feel like he's not in the piss poor 3-word answer mood anymore. Like, when we're talking about practice, that's one thing that it's a different situation. When we're talking post game, And the reason why I bring this up is we have a running, like in post game now, we have a running, like all the media guys, we don't have money on the line, but we're betting on what color his do-rag is going to be for the game, for post game. And he's gotten involved in it. Like he comes out with it. He's having fun with it. And so I know this sounds strange, but like these are ways that like we're breaking the ice with him. He walks in the room and someone is celebrating because they got the right color. It has this like,
hasn't been me.
It hasn't been Sean yet. But
usually
it
walks in and I'm like, F.
Yeah, it adds this element of something different where I think it actually has changed his perspective. He's looking around. Okay, who's the winner? Who's winning tonight?
Right.
And to be honest with you, that's what I mean by De'Aaron Fox is a human. Like he is, when they lose, he wears it. When they win, he's excited sometimes, but when it's not enough, when he knows that they've lost too many games, he's not that excited. So my point is that, like, look, when he's
cooperating. Yeah, he's definitely cooperating, which is
and but I think my point though is that when you think that you have something as a media member, but you don't really have it sourced out the way you should, you have to take a step back and think, well, how is this going to be received by the player? Because that can't be the only thing that matters, but you have to have that in the back of your head that if I'm wrong here, what does this do? And like, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good to be mentioned in every single trade, unless you're Buddy Hield and you really want to go to the Lakers, then you're excited about that. But for a lot of these players, this is hard, man. They own houses. They have kids in school. Some of them, they have fiancés or wives that, you know, they've built a life where they're at expecting to be there long-term. Now they're being thrown like, you know, Harrison Barnes, you could go to Indiana at any moment. Harrison Barnes, you could go to wherever, Philadelphia or wherever. I mean, this is not easy for even a veteran like that. Even though he's been through it, it still doesn't feel good. So anyway, that's the end of that diatribe, Sean.
I'm with you. It is sad when you have to say these guys are human. It's like, well, of course they are. The fact that has to be said is just crazy.
Yeah, but I think what we've done though, I'm watching social media now. It's just so horrible. Like,
well, don't. Yeah, I mean, social media is a vile place.
Yeah, it's bad.
There's
like,
no
stop
empathy.
Being mean, people. Yeah,
it's rare to find empathy in human moments that, like, you know, again, like this is the stuff you'll see in a comment section of a YouTube page or a Facebook page or a Instagram. You know, again, these guys go through a lot, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to Fox the other day about how does he attack his social media, because I think at a certain point everybody kind of just, not even human beings, sometimes, you know, regular everyday run-of-the-mill Joes working a 9 to 5 sometimes have to take a step back. It can be a little bit inundating. It can be a little bit too negative, or, you know, it's rarely where, you know, someone goes, man, this social media stuff's just way too positive. It's kittens and dogs and, you know, babies. Like, no, it can be a pretty vile place.
I've had people ask me, why did you block me? And then I send them what they wrote to me. Like, do you realize how vile that was? You just said to me, like, you can kick rocks, dude.
Yeah.
Like, there's no coming back from that.
I don't.
It's very anyone. Seldom. I block people.
I don't block anyone.
Oh, I
even
love
and I love that Twitter has the mute thing. I don't even mute people. I probably should.
I don't want to mute people. I want them.
I kind of want to see it all. I get amusement out of both the negative and all that stuff, but I also just kind of feel like sometimes a little spark. You mentioned someone with like maybe 3 or 4 followers that says something can become something big. Like, I had a conversation with a media member the other day where they were talking about the SNL sketch and how they wanted to do a possible story on it. And I was like, well, timely. I mean, that's like almost a week ago now, but, you know, okay. And
all right.
referencing that there's a Twitter account that somebody has created. And I wanted to be like, well, you know, that's an actor. Like the character in SNL, like, he's not really running it. You know what I mean? And it's like, no, but it's getting some engagement. And he's right. Like, they are getting some engagement that shows up with people having fun with it. So
yeah.
go ahead if you feel like engagement. I it's not my cup of tea, and I'm the biggest SNL fan you'll ever meet. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know, especially when it's almost a week old.
Yeah, it's almost a week old. All right, so we've got to cut it short today because I've got to go on the radio in a few minutes. We keep doing this back to back with radio. Luckily, today is only an hour on the radio.
We're gonna kill James, is what we're gonna do. We're gonna really kill you.
I can talk all day long.
Can you? There it is. You almost died right there.
Yeah, I did. I almost died. I can talk all day long. I can't sit all day long. So I have a horrible back. I have herniated discs and like bulging discs and other stuff going on, which I've had for a while. But sitting and hanging out here for 5.5 hours, 6 hours, like we did on Tuesday, that was a little rough. That was not walking right for the rest of the day. Okay, Sean, we've got to get to the business of basketball.
Almost thought we weren't going to do it.
I think we're not going to go down to like, what is our past. We're not going to dig into our knowledge here. I'm just going to throw it straight out to you. What's your percentage? Like, we can do like 1 through 10 that the Kings make a franchise altering trade between now and February 10th. In your opinion, what is the odds that happens?
Well, I did caveat by saying I don't think Ben Simmons will be coming to Sacramento. So I'm going to say 40%.
Okay. 40%.
Because I felt like it was 50-50, and I still think Ben Simmons could. Don't get me wrong. I just think at the end of the day, when we get to the deadline, it's not going to be there for Philly, meaning that I don't think Daryl Morey's going to move him. And if you're doing that, then you have to find other franchise-altering pieces in the NBA, and it's a little bit harder. Sabonis clearly would qualify. Siakam, we've heard some of those names out there before, and I don't think they're going to move him either. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's probably around 40% at that point. And I think their best chance in doing it is being linked to a Simmons trade, not only with Simmons coming to Sacramento, but even with the whole, can it be a John Collins? Can it be a Chris, stuff like that? Can you bring in somebody else? I'm going to say 40%. And again, as I'm saying this, guys, I'm saying this, it's not going to be for lack of trying. I mean, this team is going to try very, very, very hard. They have been. And that's one of the reasons why I constantly get offended on their behalf when people insinuate, like, what do these guys do all day? It's like, they haven't made a move. What do they do? It's like
straight worn out, man.
Right. Yeah. They have zero free time. That's what it's crazy.
It's brutal. So, yeah.
I'm going to say 40% because I still think there's moves to be made. But franchise altering, I'm going to put it 40%.
I'm going to say 60.
I like it. I like the
60.
Optimism.
A 60% chance. I would even go like 65% chance.
Is that because you believe it's Ben Simmons?
No. I think that I think that at least 2 of the core pieces will be gone, and that there will be equal to or better than, or just flat out different versions in those spots. Even if it's not a big trade, it will be enough to make me think, okay, that was altering. That stopped the 4 or 5 year run of the same exact group.
So having any of the Buddy Hield, Harrison Barnes, De'Aaron Fox, Roshawn Holmes.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even put Howard. I mean, he's core, but it's unfair to put him in there. But yeah, he's definitely core.
All right, we're up against it. Sean, do you have any final thoughts?
Final thoughts. I do not. I really don't.
You always say that, but then you do.
And then something comes around. I was very pissed off that I was going to go see Nothing But Thieves, this brilliant rock band from Europe, and they had to cancel all their U.S. dates, which was very sad. So I'm a little bit in mourning.
Did they take your money? Because that would be right on par with their name.
Well, I know. They did take my money, but I'm going to get it back. It's refundable for sure.
Sweet.
And it wasn't even like I don't even think it was like COVID fears and stuff like that, but it was unfortunate. I was going to go see him at Ace of Spades, and it's not going to happen now.
All right. Okay, so I'm gonna finish up real quick. Big shout out to Jim Espinoza at Brick House for the Brick House Industries for the really cool sweatshirt, like super thick and warm. I love it. I'm
That's
gonna get
great.
Sean one. He's gonna wear one. It
Big boy
won't have
size.
it won't say James Ham on it.
Yeah,
Which
that was a little weird. You
I
showed me
would
and I
take
was like,
some ownership over Sean. That would be weird.
I don't know if I could wear another man's name on my
I think
body.
that
That's
would be
just,
emasculating in some weird way.
and I'm glad you were cool with it. I was like,
Oh
I
no, I
literally,
wouldn't do
you
that to
showed it to
you.
me and I was like, James, I don't know. I was like, do you have any with
Do,
out your name?
do you have anything with yeah, I got you, Sean. You don't have to put a band-aid over my name. That would be weird. It will probably say something like the Kings Beat Podcast.
There you are.
Which make sure you're giving us a subscribe here on YouTube, a thumbs up here on YouTube. Keep watching, keep listening. We're doing like really cool things, and I love the growth that we're seeing here every single week on the Kings Beat. And then make sure to jump on, subscribe to the Kings Beat, the newsletter, and make sure you do a paid subscription if you can, so you get an invite to the happy hour that's coming up very quickly in early February, barring crazy trade deadline stuff. And I think that's going to do it. We'll see you next week. Hopefully between now and then, we won't have to have an emergency pod if something crazy happens. But for Sean Cunningham from ABC 10, I am James Ham, your Kings insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. We will see you on Tuesday, barring chaos, which is what we've been through the last couple of days.